Hi, and welcome everyone to the lounge on this lovely October evening. It's so nice to have you all here with this wonderful transition into the fall energy. I can't wait to see what you guys do, how you manifest. And, this is a point in time now that all those retrogrades are over that we're starting to look at hunkering down, creating that bubble in our relationships. All the holidays are right around the corner. So, how do we become closer? How do we become more intimate? How do we become more connected? Is the question. A lot of people think, oh, if I have more money, more time, get to this level in my career, everything will be okay. But really, from my clients and people that have come to me, they think they want one thing, but really, what they're looking for is connection. They're looking to finally get present again, feel the connection to themselves, number one, where they might feel disconnected and want something external to fill that void, but what they really want is connection to themselves and another human being. And what does everybody always call me about? They think it's with somebody from the other side or their career, but at the end of the session, it always comes back to Marissa, I have one more question, and it's about love. It's about relationships. And I'm like, I thought everything's going great in your career and everything's going great with your finance. They're like, yeah, but my love life, not so good. So I can't tell you how many times I have beautiful, successful, just confident men and women coming to me for sessions that are successful in every area of their life except this one area where they keep replaying patterns, cycles over and over again, and not knowing why and feeling really hopeless after each relationship is going through this cycle and feeling almost like a lot of shame about that they can't really talk about. And so we have our transformational series. We talk about breaking patterns, but I thought, why not? Why not bing, bing? Why not bring Bob Grant back? Bob has been on my show since I don't know, like 15 years ago. Every show that I've had, every radio show, every live stream, Bob Grant has been with us since the beginning. So a lot of you might know him. A lot of you might recognize him as our relationship expert, strategist. He has his programs, he has ebooks, he has a wonderful program he's going to be talking about tonight. For those of you out there that are really struggling with communication in your relationships, with tuning into your feelings, how to express those feelings, how to be vulnerable, and how to really connect with the other person in your life. Now, Bob Grant primarily works with helping women and understand men, but that doesn't mean you can't apply this if you're in a different type of relationship. And we'll talk to Bob about this, how it can be applied, if you are in something other than a heterosexual relationship. And I'm sure these principles could be applied with anyone. But you'll see from the graphic, we are talking about tonight the things that push men away, to help you understand the biology of the male a little bit more, and the three things that men find irresistible. So I'm interested to hear these things, because when Bob comes on, he really gets into the practical. He really gets into these tips that you're like, wow, you have those light bulb moments. Like, these aren't things that you have to think about or worry about, because they're right there in front of you. So before we get Bob on the line here, if you haven't done this yet, this is my new quiz. If you want to find out how to really tune into your inner wisdom in your relationships, and how to figure out if you're attracting the right person or attracted or choosing the right person in your life, you have to figure out what your intuitive type is, your intuitive superpower. So the link is in the description of this video, and it's free. And you'll be one of 4 types of intuitives. So it's going to give you a little bit of information on what type of intuition you have, which will help you so much in the areas of love and relationships. Because when you look back on it, so many times you say, oh, I knew that. I had that subtle message early on, but I didn't listen to it. So make sure after the show, you take the quiz, what's your intuitive superpower? Also, in the link in the description, if you're on YouTube, make sure to subscribe. You'll know when we're going live each time. Make sure that you're getting on my list to get my monthly energy forecast, which only goes out to my email subscribers, which goes over every day of the month coming up in the next 30 days. It goes out next week on the 15th of the month, and you will get it directly to your email box. And I go over all the dates and times that are optimal for making your key decisions in the areas of love, romance, and career. So make sure you go and take that quiz. And if you want, during the broadcast, let me know what you got, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So let's talk a little bit more about Bob and what he's going to be bringing to the table tonight. So Bob Grant, just a short bio on him. He is a clinically trained relationship expert and Amazon best-selling author. He also is a coach and a guitarist, which I did not know after all these years. So that's something new that I didn't know about Bob. He also hosts the life-changing Embracing Your Emotions Journey for Women. And this is new. This is a brand new course that he has coming on, a live cohort. And I can't wait to ask him some more questions about that. So I'm going to give you some links when we have Bob on, how to get in touch with him. But I cannot wait to bring him on. So without further ado, we welcome to the show, Bob Grant. Hi, Bob. How are you?
Hello there. It's nice to be here again. Has it really been 15 years?
I think so.
Is that true?
I think so. Maybe my sense of time is off, but I think so.
But I do remember your different stopping places.
Yeah, many. But you were way back, like in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. So it's nice to be here again.
You've been on multiple times on many different shows, so sometimes I don't even know which ones are which anymore when you were on. Mm-hmm. So this is great. So I ended up watching one of your videos. I was just, I was complimenting you backstage. You have this great newsletter that I love reading. So if you guys want to get relationship tips like 2 to 3 times a week, Bob does send out this awesome newsletter, and get on his email list because he gives all these tips and you're like, wow, I want to open this and see what it has to say. So yeah. And I went on one of his recent podcasts where he talked about some of these topics we're going to be talking about tonight. And before we get into the 3 ways women push a man away and why we need to know what that is, tell us a little bit about the last time you were on and how we brought one of our viewers on and what happened and what the campfire effect is in terms of relationships.
Yes, I remember someone was struggling with a relationship and it was, hey, why not bring her on and let's just see where it goes. And in the process of that, I mean, what became obvious was she was very hard on herself, but she didn't, It wasn't obvious. It wasn't until started asking questions and you listened. And it wasn't things like I'm so stupid, or it wasn't obvious things like that. But there were like certain emotions that she just like weak and sad. Those were just like bad. And so all of her efforts not to appear weak or sad or anything like that, actually it kept her safe, but it came across as a bit detached.
Yeah.
And as she started talking, those feelings came out. I know she felt embarrassed, but me and you and I forgot whoever else was on there with us. I mean, everyone did great because we weren't embarrassed. We were like, you look more real. We were like, and she was like, oh, I don't feel more real. And it's not that she fell apart, but her actions were matching her words because she was describing some things that were painful. And it didn't make sense if she was laughing about it. There was a disconnect. But then when all of a sudden the feelings started to come out, it made her more relatable. It made all of us feel closer to her. But it didn't feel confident to her. And that's what was such a paradox for her. Was she, the way she felt was, oh, I feel really embarrassed. And we were like, oh no. And I forget who the guy was. He goes, you look hot. he was funny, whoever the co-host was. He says, no. He goes, girl, you look great. And and that's just him. Because we didn't plan this. And he was
we didn't.
And so I've done that and that experience in our Embracing Your Emotions, because what I call it is it's the genie in the bottle that men love.
Because genie in the bottle?
It is like the genie in the bottle because most women are afraid of it. They've been told, don't be so emotional, don't be so. And I go, the problem with that is you're so emotional because you keep it down. Then when it comes up, it comes bursting out like a dam. I said, the problem is not suppression. The problem is you don't let it out enough. And then they don't know how. So I guide them through. Me and I've got a co-host that leads with me during this time in online journals. And we actually show you how to do it for you. And then someone grows into it. It's not like a 14-step thing. It's every time it comes up, we kind of write with you in your journal. And you, in real time, you get to see what it feels like for you. And usually after about a few weeks, women are like, oh, I hear things like, this should have bothered me. Now, here's the weird one. Every class, I get one of these. I don't sell it this way. It's not the promise. But every class, there's someone at the end that says, I've got a dog or a cat that doesn't like people, and they came up to me and sat in my lap or next to me.
Mm.
And I've heard that enough now that it's almost a joke. I expect it because animals pick up on this. And I
Yeah.
tell them, and I say, ladies, if this dog or cat picked on, but you think men are going to pick up on this? And they're like, yes, yes. I said, because animals know. I said, that's how transformative it is when a woman, because we're not changing her as much as allowing her to be who she is.
Yeah, and I remember just to kind of put a little basis around and it was Jen, her name's Jen. And I know we have a clip of us talking and this happening. Both of us did not expect, because I've known Jen a long time, and she would always appear very stoic. You couldn't really get a lot of expression, and it was just like kind of like she didn't feel much. And she was attracting, I guess her issue at the time was she was attracting a lot of emotionally unavailable men. And she just wanted to stop that pattern. And you started asking her a line of questions, and it was like almost like, I think both of us were shocked because she went from like a woman who had like just, there was no expression, to like all of a sudden she came alive, and like almost it's like somebody else took over her body. And I don't think she even realized that everybody who was watching, like people actually had like tears in their eyes, like couldn't believe. They're like, this is so beautiful. And then she was like so embarrassed because she was like showing herself. And we're like, no, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. But I could totally relate to that, because you read all these relationship books, like especially in my early 20s, and it's saying men don't like needy women, or women who are like too much or talk about emotions too much. So I think women have gotten the idea that we shouldn't really be like needing too much, as far as like having too many issues with the person, are saying like, this is bothering me, because that means we're needy. So I don't know where our generation kind of like started to believe these things, but I guess a lot of women right now think like showing vulnerability isn't okay.
And especially if I'm told not to be needy, the paradox of that is that to not be needy actually makes me needy.
Okay.
Because then I shut everything down, and then I don't ask for what I need, and it grows and it grows, and then again, once I feel it comes out, and I overreact, or it's a lot of it's overcompensating, and then I shove it back down again, and it's the two extremes. Versus if I'm honest, and that's what she was in that moment, and I think it happened because she didn't have time to think. I mean, it wasn't that it was fast. I just think it kept creeping up on her. And most of it is we just pressed in of just being honest, of just, you said something sad, but you're laughing. I'm not making fun of you, but I don't. And all of a sudden then she could feel the wall and it started to come down. And see, remember that, and those that want will be able to see the clip. It wasn't that we forced anything. It was an invitation. And she took the invitation. And that's what makes it safe, is it can feel really vulnerable and be safe at the same time. Because unlike growing up, if I've gone through trauma, if I go through trauma growing up, I can't say stop. Well, now I can. If it's too overwhelming, we can pause. We don't have to push through this. No. And that's what makes it safer for someone to continue and to stay in that moment. So, yeah, I got a little bit of a goosebumps remembering that.
Yeah, I know. It was really an amazing moment. And I know we're going to get into the 3 ways women push men away, because I think these tips are really important. Before we get into 3 ways women push men away, why would a woman push a man away? Why is she doing it?
A lot of that's circumstantial. I mean, the obvious one, why is she pushing him away? There may be something obvious that's just happened. He's done something really bad and she's mad. That's a simple one. She's mad about something, don't want to talk about it. But more than anything, I mean, a lot of the ones I see more than anything else is that like early on in dating, I get upset and I pull away and I expect the other person to come toward me. That's kind of normal and natural. In a relationship, though, that doesn't work, because once there's familiarity, once we do that, the other person doesn't always come toward us, because there's a certain, if I can say the word respect, they assume that we will ask for what we need. But that requires us to be vulnerable to do it. So now I've done this too. If I sulk or I don't say anything and I stew over here, and eventually he's going to figure it out. He'll figure out you're upset, But that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean he's going to feel guilt over what he did. He's just going to
Mm-hmm.
see what you're doing, not what's behind it. But see, and also if I push someone away, I get to stay in my head, I get to run it over and over again, imagine it, all the scenarios I would have said. And you can hear them talking faster, but that's what happens in our head. So while they do it, usually it's an attempt for someone to come closer toward us.
Okay, because yeah, I guess in my own looking at my own stuff in relationships, there was a point in time I like realized, oh my god, like instead of just like complaining or getting mad or whatever, it's kind. I'm not stating my needs to this person. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying I need this
Mm-hmm.
because I think in my past there's been a rejection of those
Mm-hmm.
needs or
Mm-hmm.
not being able to say, oh, this is overwhelming, and somebody respecting that something's overwhelming instead like a lot of boundary issues in my early upbringing. You know what I mean? So I guess they're for people that have had that, they don't believe that their needs will be honored, so they don't state them. They'll just get mad if they're not. But maybe I'm wrong in how I'm
Well, no, if
thinking about
that's
it.
what I've grown up with, that's what I'm going to expect unless I make a conscious effort to change it or look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Because the person we're with, you know, they're not my mom and dad. Now that they're of course going to say something that reminds us of that, and our brain's going to go, there it is again. And they're like, what? What? You know, I was just clearing my throat. But that was always what happened before dad got mad and slammed the door. And
Oh,
they're
okay.
like, what? And they don't, and then we say, you cleared your throat. And they're looking at us like, sorry. And that, I mean, that's a silly one. I mean, that's really obvious, but it's things like that happen when we do it because the associations we have with it. And we just assume that they know because we said, I don't like that. Why? So it requires a little bit more vulnerability and it takes some practice. But yes,
Yeah.
that's exactly the reason why, because it's familiar.
I see. Well, let's get into these tips. I'm looking forward to it. So the three ways women push a man away. And what are the consequences? So we're gonna go through these three ways, but when a woman does this, what are the consequences to her from doing these things in the relationship?
Probably the worst consequence is when they work, because when they
Oh,
work,
geez.
they're more likely to do it again.
Okay.
So it depends on the man with this. A man can become, I mean, if it goes on over a long period of time, the biggest thing is resentment starts to occur. And part of the resentment is that it may work. Maybe she gets quiet or maybe she pushes them all, depending which one she uses. And if it works, instead of her being vulnerable, he's the one that has to apologize or come toward her, or he's the one that has to do all the work. And he can do that for a short period of time in the beginning, but then he'll start avoiding. Because if I know, let's just make this up. If I know when you get mad, you're going to not talk to me. The first sign I see of you not getting mad, I'm just going to prepare for you not talking to me for 2 days. And that's going to make you more mad because now you're
Okay.
not talking to me. Well, but you're not going to talk to me. I mean, they work short term. The consequence is how they affect your partner. They don't bring closeness. They bring where we both put our armor on. It's protecting each other. Or, I'm sorry, protecting ourselves.
I see. Well, that's kind of a heavy consequence to have in a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of where things go.
Yeah, it's like
Uh,
poison.
yeah. All right. Well, let's look at the first one. Uh, being negative and harsh. Can you explain this one?
I think probably everyone knows when I say negative and harsh, they can kind of cringe. And part of it is with resentment. If I'm negative and harsh, I have accumulated pounds of anger, guaranteed. Something's bothering me. I've hinted about it. I've mentioned it. Nothing changes. And so now something comes along that I feel more empowered. You're 10 minutes late. You're driving fast in the car. You're doing something. And I'm going to overreact to that one because I'm trying to dump this past resentment I have on you for this thing. I've told you never to be late. Okay, which the guy's late, but and so being negative and harsh it's a way to try to get his attention, but it comes across to men like a woman's trying to be controlling, which she is in a sense. Now she may be justified with why she's upset. But the problem when you do a power struggle with a man is a man detaches and his testosterone kicks in. And when he
Mm.
does that, he arms himself for battle. And the first thing you do in a battle is you withdraw and get to a safe place.
Or defend yourself. Or get defensive, right?
Well, even before that, what you'll notice with men, see, if I get defensive, that means you've gotten under my skin. The
Mm.
first place to do is to pull back. And it's like assess the enemy.
Yeah.
And that's why men get quiet when we get really upset. Because part of the reason we're getting quiet is I don't want to go off on you and I don't want to lose control. It drives women crazy. But that's what, and men overdo this at times. But see, that's where this can lead in the sense of, like one of the things with men is I tell women not to argue with men, and they think I mean agree with them. I'm like, no, that's not what I mean. I said you can argue with him. I said, but he's wired for this more than you are. His
Right.
testosterone's going to kick in. He's going to cut off from emotions, and he's going to play to win.
Right.
And you're going to get mad. So
Yeah. So when you say don't argue with a man, what does that mean?
So you can tell when you're arguing when it feels competitive. It's almost like my tone right now. It gets faster. And I can't believe you would do this. And you may win that argument. But when it feels competitive, you guys aren't connecting. And I'm trying to get women to get out of that because it's not going to end well. You may get him to say whatever, but he's going to resent you. He's going to start looking at you as a competitor. So remember, what men hate more than anything else is not to be yelled at, it's to be ignored. We hate that. And so the more I can get a woman, once it feels competitive, to get out of that one, and some version of this doesn't feel good, this doesn't, and as she gets out of that, then she can talk later. That doesn't mean she gives in to what he says, but I want him to understand the moment he gets competitive for her, it's the process she wants to get out of. Because what she's saying is we can discuss anything, but not if you're loud or threatening or whatever it is for her. Not when you get 1 inch from my face. Well, just whatever that line is for her. I don't want to wait till it's a really big deal, because firing back at him doesn't prove she's strong. Firing back at him actually is a sign of weakness.
See, and women, I guess, sometimes think, well, if I stand up for myself, they're going to see that I'm not a weak person.
Well, I'll tell you how men see that. When a man sees a woman do that, unless she has an authority position, she's his boss, his mother, perhaps even his wife to some degree. But it's not really a threat to us. That doesn't really, I mean, you're standing up for yourself, but it's from a power position. I read something Meryl Streep talked about when she did The Devil Wears Prada, that role. And she says, all the research she did, she said she found that the women bosses that were quiet were the most terrifying. She goes, not the loud ones. She goes, the loud ones people just got used to, they yell stuff. And you remember her character, she was ice cold scary. And she would, when the more mad she got, the quieter she got.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone, and so I'm not asking everyone to be like that, as much as getting out of it doesn't mean the conflict's over. It's too important to try to force my position. And I tell women, I go, leave him alone. I said, when he wants to come back and act like everything's normal, I said, you tell him, I'm still upset with you. Don't let him off the hook. It's not that. Because that's what he wants. He thinks if he just blows it off. And the ones that'll stick with it, those are the ones that train him, and men don't mind that I can discuss anything, but that does not work with me. I don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
That's much more powerful to a man. Because when I'm talking that way, I'm in control.
Let's go to number 2, because I think that you've made your point on that. I think it makes a lot of sense. Looking for ways to test him.
So this is about reassurance, and this has to do with her. I mean, men do this too. It's I'm going to test because I want to see, the one I love is if he really kept his word.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, you can test him. That is beyond insulting when folks do that. Is men love to be trusted, and sometimes we overdo that. Sometimes they just want to blanket trust. And I tell men, I go, you have to nurture that. I get that you want the benefit of the doubt, absolutely, but don't do dumb things that make her scared. I mean, I know that should be obvious, but just you can't have it both ways.
Mm-hmm.
And for her, it's, I'm not sure. And when I hear women start, he said this, but he meant this. I was doing some research a couple of weeks ago, and it's about the hippocampus in men is smaller. And when men fall in love, our testosterone drops, and our hippocampus, I don't know if shrinks is the right word, but we use it less. And this is a woman that said this wasn't me, but that men forget things more so than women. And I'm like, oh, thank goodness I'm not the only one that sees it. But she was talking about research-wise. She goes, ladies, when he falls in love, he's going to forget more. That's not him being clueless. He's just, And the testosterone drop makes sense in the sense of, that keeps men from like having to like hunt all the time. We want that. But testing him is she's wanting him to do a certain thing as opposed to rewarding him. So I want women to be rewarders, as opposed to fixers or testers. And the reward is when he does something you like, you give some type of emotional response, because for a man, that gives him a win. And men do well with, we need wins. It's different than women. We need wins. Doesn't have to be a lot, but every time we get a win, that tells us that works. Oh, and that's how we start to learn with the woman we're with, her unique signature, because every woman is a little different. Testing him goes with the idea that he knows this or should know it and stuff, and maybe he should, but he will get tired of being tested. I mean, no one likes that, but men hate it. After all, of course, women won't call it that. But it's an insecurity that I don't have to be vulnerable. I'm just going to make sure you pass the test. It'd be like treading water all day long. I can do it, but at some point I'm just tired.
Yeah. And why? I mean, thinking about the couples that I know that are always fighting, that are always at each other. And it's like, I know the women friends that I have are like, they just want to keep testing to see, like, will he stop fighting with her, to know that she can feel safe around him or trust him. And like, how do you stop that cycle?
Well, I think the need is legitimate in the sense of wanting to feel reassured and wanting to feel some connection.
Yeah.
The tool and the method doesn't work really well. So I like pressing in with, okay, instead of telling you just to quit doing this, and like what you said. So if you keep doing this, what is it you think will happen, hope will happen? He'll, whatever, stop fighting. He'll reassure me. I say, okay, well, I don't know that he likes doing it this way, but if it's about you being reassured, tell me what you like. How can we make this easier for him? Can we have a cheat sheet? But see, that requires a woman taking some time and realizing what she likes, because once she says this and he starts doing it, she needs to have an idea, or at least it's close. I know it changes, month to month sometimes, but so that he can do those things as opposed to not doing stuff or doing stuff that's unfamiliar is hard, because if I'm a man and a woman likes to be called back immediately, okay, and I don't think that way, I can do that, but that's not going to come natural to me. Just because she told me once or twice, I'm not going to, but I can do it because she likes it. But once it gets into you should, you must. If you were a good boyfriend, I'm like, then this gets into the challenging stuff. It's like, no. Some men will cower down and go, sorry. And then resentment's going to build when that happens, because she's making it where there's a win-lose. I don't like men testing women either. So it's both ways. So a lot of times it's based out of fear. And it's, tell me more about the fear and what it is that would help beside this way you're used to doing it.
Right. No, that makes so much sense. What would you say that, like, when women and men argue, because you have these battles where you have couples that are arguing all the time, and then you have couples that don't talk at all. The communication is just shut down.
Which is just a different way of arguing.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's no communication at all. Like, I remember, like, the other day I was at a picnic, and I was like, oh, hey, like, I think I know your husband. And she said, oh, we're getting divorced. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, what? And she's like, yeah, he just stopped talking to me for a whole year. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, he just stopped talking. I'm like, well, I don't understand. Like, how does that happen? Like, he just stopped talking. There's no arguing. He just stopped talking.
And usually if folks do that, they feel it's hopeless to try. So I'm not saying it's justified. I'm not saying it's good. But when someone stopped talking, it's not the same as abuse. So pardon that. But it's similar in the sense of, if nothing's going to work, why bother? Now, some of us give up way too easy with that they stop trying too soon. And the biggest cause of that is resentment. Is that I feel like I'm giving more than I'm getting, which is okay for a short period of time. It's not okay for the long haul, because no one can do that for a long period of time.
Yeah, because I asked them how long have you guys been together? Because I knew this person from high school, and she's like 20 years. I'm like 20 years, and all of a sudden, like, there's got to be more to this story.
Oh, there is.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so, and then on the other flip side, you have men and women that are arguing, and then the man starts getting mean verbally,
Mhm.
like just starts getting sarcastic,
Mhm.
or he starts saying mean things.
Mhm.
And then the women get more mad. So like,
Mhm.
what do you say about the men who start getting mean? Like what's that all about?
I mean, it's not good. They shouldn't do it. And if that would be enough to stop it, I would leave there. But that's more of a symptom. I mean, it's a nasty symptom. It's more
Yeah.
of a symptom. So when I tell women don't argue, I'm not putting it all on them. It's just you have control over that. And that's why their emotions are so important. I say it's not, well, he didn't say anything that bad. I'm like, I don't care about that. Did you feel it? And she can feel when it starts to escalate. I'm like, get out of that. And I tell men this too. I said, if it feels competitive, get out. Because even if you win, you're going to lose. You may win short term. That will be a victory that will cost you for weeks. So it's both I'm after, because once they're even in my office, I remember when I would have folks in the office, and that one rule was this is going to be a safe place. And one of the things I would monitor was tone, not perfect, but once it started escalating, I would say, okay, let me slow you down a little bit. Now I can't make them do that, but I would tell them, I said, look, if you won't let me stop you, there's no sense coming back.
Mm,
I said,
mhm,
because no one's going to talk if someone's just going to up the ante.
mhm.
And almost every time they would let me stop them and doing it. And they weren't used to doing that because to lower your tone, slow down felt like giving up.
Right, right,
I said, you're
right.
not giving up. I said, this is too important to try to force through. You're doing it wrong. I said, when you raise your voice, it's like an argument. The loudest person that wins, that's a crummy argument if I've got to raise my voice.
Mhm.
Even if we disagree,
Right.
that shows weakness.
Wow, so much to delve into. Like I could talk to you about each one of these things for like a whole half
Mhm.
hour. But let's get
Mhm.
to number 3, which is doing things to ruin end the relationship. Why would somebody want to do this? This is like, why would you want to do this anyway? Is this a
So,
subconscious thing?
I mean, some of this has to do with addictive things. It feels good when I want it to feel good. I go out when I want to. You don't get that in a committed relationship. You're going to have good days and bad days with them because people have stuff that happens. And I don't necessarily want to feel bad. And I've got one client and she's about to get married and she's freaking out because she's used to always going out with some hot guy, and then it doesn't work out because he treats her like dirt. Then she finds another hot guy
Hmm.
and she wants to get married. Now she's getting married and it is insane. The thing she's not insane. She's not insane, but the things she's looking for are insane about stuff. And she's picking fights because she's afraid that this illusion she's built up with in her mind of how marriage is going to be isn't going to come true. And it's not. But she's used that as a way to escape from pain and loneliness of just one day I'll be married and one day it'll be wonderful. And one day happiness will come to me. And now it's here. And this guy, and she even admits, she goes, he really is attractive. Something's wrong with me. So I
Wait,
don't see it.
what?
She goes, he's really attractive. She knows what she's doing. She feels like I can't stop it, because what she's doing is she's trying to put her anxiety someplace. So she needs a problem to fix. And he's patient. He'd have to be. He's patient, loves her when she's wonderful. She's wonderful. And part of what she's doing is she's trying to create it's similar to a test, but she's doing stuff to push him away because she's afraid of him getting close because she doesn't like to look inside. She's afraid of these feelings because with him, she's starting to feel. And now one day I won't feel uncomfortable or anxious. Once I find the perfect person, she's found the guy. I mean, he's perfect for her. And yet she's still anxious. And that's why she's freaking out that something's wrong. No, nothing's wrong. No, I shouldn't feel anxious. That's going to take a little time for her to unwind. She's not stupid, but there's a part of her brain that's being clever that thinks it's protecting her because
Mm.
she's built up how marriage is supposed to be. No doubts, no scared. And that's what's starting to come unbundled now as it needs to, but it's driving her crazy.
So the person, your client, did she ever marry this person?
She's
Or
engaged. I mean, I'm pretty sure she will. I mean, I would bet she will. Um, Part of it's just getting her to slow down, and when she starts to self-sabotaging stuff to ruin it, is really just to realize what she's doing. Of just yes, when you go to some alumni thing with him, and somebody else's wife is mean, that's got nothing to do with him. That guy who he hasn't seen in 20 years, his wife is just mean. Has nothing to do with your fiance. Versus, how my fiance bring me to a place like this with mean people?
mm,
Okay, I don't think these are necessarily mean people. There's this one woman that is. And see that slowing it down because the speed of it is how she's trying to like dump all this anxiety versus no, it's just supposed to feel a little nervous when you go someplace you don't know anybody but your fiance. That's normal.
So what is her real fear, do you think? Is that she's going to marry the wrong person?
Well, her fear is that he's going to see sides of her that she's afraid of
And he's going to leave.
and leave.
Hmm. But hasn't she? I mean, she's been with him long enough where maybe he's already seen all those sides, I'm assuming, right?
Yes, you're being logical. Yes, that
Okay.
is true. But it has more to do with inside of her. That's why the first thing we talk about because she was in our emotions class, is those feelings she's trying to get rid of until she can embrace them and learn what that means. She's going to keep trying to kill them. And she wants him to kill them. She wants to never feel bored. That's going to cost the guy $100 million if she is never to be bored.
Right.
It's just much easier to work on what I do with bored versus he has to always spend all his money.
So what have you uncovered about her that maybe was that like light bulb moment where did she have kind of that moment that Jen had in your class where she was like,
Yes.
oh, it's me. This is what's going on.
Yeah, part of it was when I would talk back with her about when she would, once you start writing after a while, just the real you comes out, and she was, I can't believe I'm whatever age is 28, and still not married, and just what a loser I am, and all that. And then she would talk to feelings, and then I would take that same thing with those feelings and say it differently, like, I can see why you're scared. I forget the stuff we would do, and it was more of a stubborn thing. No matter how pitiful is the wrong word, how harsh she was, I wouldn't do it. And just after time, she started to see that there really was a different way for her to talk to herself, that it didn't have to be the way she was doing. And then the weird thing was when she would allow herself to feel certain things, what always happens is a few days or a couple weeks later, all of a sudden she says, I feel really happy. I don't know why. I said, because you're not trying to kill your feelings. I said, they're not treading water for life anymore. So they're relaxed now. That's why you feel. But see, it's not that she did something to feel happy. And then she would see him, and then she would have like a week or two, and she was like, oh my gosh, how did I get him? But see, once that happens, now that's vulnerable. And when it's vulnerable, she goes back to what's familiar. Something's going to happen. Shoe's going to drop. Somebody's going to leave me. Something's going to happen. I got to find something. He's boring. And you hear me talking fast again.
Yeah.
Go back into that. And it's just about going in and out of that loop enough times until she starts to recognize, oh, this is what I do. Yeah, that's what you do. And then we normalize it, and then it starts to go away.
Does she have a history of trauma or like a divorce?
Yeah, not the traditional kind. But oftentimes there's neglect from a parent in the sense of parents had really high standards, and there wasn't a lot of affection shown. It wasn't necessarily mean, as opposed to it was more sterile.
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore the person learns to kind of fend for themselves, which means anything that feels bad must be bad. It's not true, but that's what you grow up with.
Right. And that fantasy of like, if you get married, it's supposed to be what you have in your mind.
Safe all the time. It's supposed to always feel safe.
Yep. And
all of us have some of that. So I'm not making fun of her. I mean, all of us have some of that.
So is the reality that a good relationship is going to have tough times, like even if it's the right one?
I mean, tough times I think uncomfortable might be, it can be tough at times, but if I know that going in that we're a team, okay, if we're a team, because men understand this like in sports, if we're a team, we're going to have to make adjustments. We're going to get knocked down. We're going to have a bad inning or quarter or something over here. Men do well when they think like that, team-wise. If I get women to think, that's not necessarily like that literally, but we're a team, which is in, of course, they're going to see parts of me that I don't like, but that's more on me, not necessarily to be totally at peace with it, but to realize is that intimacy involves letting him come inside. I don't mean just physically, but especially emotionally. And if I'm not willing to look at those things, I won't let him do that. And so therefore, marriage will stir that up. And if not marriage, children absolutely will. For here, children will absolutely do that if you don't. But it gives us a chance, because as we look at, a lot of times the things we look at will start to fade away just because we look at them without any necessarily like huge intervention. It's the lack of willingness to look at them, and we carry that into a marriage especially, is when I don't do that, our spouse sees it. They're not even trying to. And then now they're supposed to avoid it too.
So walking on eggshells.
Walking on eggshells, yes.
Yes. So I think that's what a lot of couples will do is they'll be fighting so much that then they don't want to say something else that bothers them
Mhm,
because then there'll be
mhm,
another fight. So
mhm,
better to keep the
mhm,
peace than to start
mhm,
talking about your feelings again because it'll
mhm,
start another fight.
mhm.
So,
Yeah, it's
you
like a
know,
cycle to get out of.
yeah. So now that we talked about all the negative, let's go into the positive, what men find irresistible.
Mhm.
Let's continue on a positive note here. So number 1 is interestingly enough, your smile.
It's so simple. I have read this, and the most recent thing out they were talking about this is I love how when folks research this, it's not that they're like trying to research the smile, but they always come back to what's the one thing to do. And the smile, the simple thing is what it tells men is that you're safe. That's why women don't smile at a man they have no interest in and who's creepy because they know it's an invitation.
Right.
And I've had clients from New York that have told me we just don't smile here. I said, I'm not saying go down the street because you see someone every half second smile. I said, I don't mean that. I said, but just when you make it just a habit to smile as your first thing, I said, that's much better than you trying to turn that on and off with someone you like and don't like. Because when someone you like, when you do that, I said, the problem is it's going to come across awkward and you're not going to do it well. I said, you want it to become a habit. And if you do it well, I said, you're going to have guys approach you or men approach you that you're not interested in. I said, that's a problem you want to have. I said, that's, you don't want to, it's not a laser. You can, cut it on and off. And because that's just expression of who you are, when men feel it's safer to approach, it makes them take more risk with you. And
Interesting.
once you're married, it reminds the husband that you're on his team.
Oh, love that. Love that.
Mhm,
I think that's great.
mhm.
Number 2 is being approachable.
So, what do you think this means? I'm going to tell you what to me it means. What's your first impression when you hear this, or
That
when
you
you
have
see
a
that?
you have an energy that makes him feel comfortable and he could take the risk to talk to you
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that you're not going to be mean.
yeah. So I like what you start off with as far as the energy, because the energy comes from inside, right? And so part of that energy comes from me being honest with myself, not necessarily about like this specific moment, but if something's been bothering me for a couple of days, and I'm going to blow that off and blow that off, it's going to come across to people that they're going to be guarded or distant, as opposed to if it's the IRS I need to call or my child's in the hospital, something. It doesn't mean I have to go fix it necessarily, but to remind myself, yeah, that is bothering me. That's a little heavy. That's just from time to time. Because in doing that, I won't be as guarded about someone coming close to me, about someone, because if I got something that's bothering me, my energy is down, they're going to see that I'm in a cocoon. Men will pick up on this. Some women will do this as a way of, I'm not going to get hurt again. And so I'm going to have this big wall because only real men are going to be able to climb over this wall. And the problem with that is the only men that are interested in that are players because it's a
Mm,
challenge.
mm.
Can I break down her walls? And then when I can, I'm full, I'm done. And
Jeez.
they mistake that as a great guy. I'm like, he may be great, but because that wall tells most men she's not interested. And they don't think in terms of, oh, I need to break through this wall. That they're like, okay, tried, she's not interested. And so part of approachable is being honest with myself, because most of the time when women are guarded, there's things they're carrying. They're not necessarily trying to be guarded and they haven't dealt with them or looked at them. So that's the energy is a good word,
Yeah.
and that willingness to do it. Because if I'm really like that, then what is it I'm carrying is probably a better word.
And your laughter. So that's kind of like your smile, but like a step up.
So part with your laughter is it's okay. Every man wants the woman he cares about to think she's funny, which doesn't mean, ladies, let's pretend you think he's funny. And this is more like a dating thing. If you don't find him funny, it doesn't help to pretend you think he's funny.
Mm.
Because if you don't think he's funny, this probably isn't going to work out. I don't mean like you want a comedian, but women I think value humor not just for the funniest guy, but there's a strength in humor. He doesn't take
Yeah.
himself too seriously.
Yeah.
He's not. There's a confidence that comes from a man that doesn't mind laughing himself, and so he loves your laugh because that's a confirmation that you guys are connecting. Now, I don't mean like on the first date, give someone the benefit of the doubt, be polite, that kind of stuff. But your laughter is a big deal because it is the authenticity that represents. And so most time with women, I say it's not so much what you're doing wrong, is don't keep it all inside.
So you have to have the same sense of humor.
Well, I mean, I can tell you how to like laugh at that joke and stuff, but
Yeah.
over time, what's good? See, those don't necessarily blend together. I mean, it's one thing if someone. I mean, there's going to be some things that just there's a little bit of overlap. It's not a perfect thing, but I'm becoming more and more that we build on what works well, and then the stuff that doesn't work as well, is this a deal breaker or not? Can I accept it or not? And the laughter is a pretty big deal,
Mm-hmm.
and whatever that means to each person. And I mean, I do this with close friends too. If someone's a really close friend, most every close friend we have, we can laugh with. There may be some weird exception, but that's one of the things I find is even really serious, really even may have dry sense of humor, but there's just and that's the camaraderie that we have a sense of that's how we connect. And so that was a big deal. And so he loves that because that says she gets me.
Mm-hmm.
So if you
So
don't get the humor, yep.
Is there like, what if you laugh, like you have your own things that you laugh about, but you just don't share like a core sense of humor?
Yeah,
The
some of that over
style.
time, because if that's the case, that's probably going to show up in other areas.
Yeah.
So it's not that because I mean, I'm thinking of women I know that they think her husband's goofy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now if she's insulted by that, that's a problem. Not for
Yeah.
her, but that's just not a good fit. And granted, he doesn't need to act like a schoolboy when they're going to church or a schoolboy at a business meeting. I mean, he doesn't. I mean,
Right.
there's realistic stuff. But if she doesn't like that quality, it's not going to work. And it's not because she's wrong or he's right or vice versa. It's just it's not a good fit. Because most of the time, even with that, is that she may roll her eyes, but if you're around them long enough, she thinks it's funny. She can't believe it. I've seen that before. Really serious women, and the guy will do something like this, and she'll roll her eyes. She's like, and then if you watch longer, she'll say, oh. I go, do you really hate? She goes, no, I like it. She can't believe that she does, but that's not her sense of humor per se.
But so it could work out with her, even if it's not her own sense of humor.
Yeah, as long as she likes it, because the idea, it's not just, can I accept this? I won't change, especially with laughter. It's more of, do I want this in my life? This will give you an idea. I remember years ago, I went on a date with someone and we knew each other kind of well. And we went to dinner and she did this to jerk my chain. But I didn't know her that well. And we got to the restaurant and she looked at the menus and she says, he'll order for me. And I could just feel it. It was, I mean, and she smiled at me. She knew what she was doing. Now, is that something that goes with my sense of humor, whatever? No, but I really like that because that was a way of her being playful. That wouldn't be the way I would do it.
Right.
As opposed to, she wasn't like trying to prove who was boss. She wasn't trying to, as long as we feel it's playful and there's a connection with it, it can certainly be different. That would always be there with her, that part of her. See, if I don't like that, that's not going away.
Oh, so you're not saying that somebody, like, if your partner's goofy, like you have to be goofy. You just have to like accept that that's how they are.
It would be better if you liked it to some degree.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Because like if I like someone that's smart, or if I don't like someone smart, if I'm threatened by that, she can't keep her intellect under wraps all the time.
Yeah.
Nor should she. Same with the sense of humor. Most folks, I mean, that's what most folks call chemistry. It's not necessarily they're really intense. It's that we can laugh together, maybe different sense of humor, different points of view. Because if we have trouble laughing together, we're really seeing the world differently.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just and that's going to show up in so many other areas.
I think I have one more here. Ability to be at ease.
Yes. So the ability to be at ease is the short version is this is the way you treat men that you're not interested in, which is easy.
Yeah.
You're not mean to them. You're not ugly. You just don't care. I mean, you're not ugly to them. And that ability to be at ease is, from what I've read and seen, that's the most attractive quality there is. I mean, smiling is a close number 2. And what happens is folks tend to want to do this with the men they're interested in, and the one they're not, they want to like pull back. And I say it doesn't work that way. I said you either have to be all in with this, which means treat every man the same, But guys will ask me out. I said, they might. And if you're not interested, you find a way to decline. I said, but you want this to be constant so that with the men you're interested in, it's just something of what you do as opposed to you turn it on or off.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the best ways to do this is to practice being curious. You're not a detective, but just interesting. You're not promising anything, but you're just interested in what he's saying. And because that's what you would be with someone you really like.
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
These are also great. I know we went through so much tonight, and if you're watching and you have questions, feel free to write in the comments, and after the replay, we will be there to answer your questions. I want to talk about your program, because if you liked what Bob had to say tonight and you want to join, I think your cohort, your live class is opening soon.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to bring up, well, first of all, if you want to learn more about Bob, relationshipheadquarters.com.
Mm-hmm.
Easy to remember. It'll be in the description. He also has a YouTube channel, Relationship Headquarters. So if you just put in Relationship Headquarters anywhere, you're going to get Bob. The best thing to do is really to sign up for his newsletter, because then it'll connect you to his podcasts and, his interviews and all his programs. I'm really enjoying his newsletter. Let's talk a little bit about your program. When does it start? Who's your ideal? Who is it really ideally for, and what kind of goals should they have?
So it's starts October 12th, and we do a couple of Zoom meetings, 2 a month. But the biggest aspect of it is the online journal we had mentioned. And what I found with that is that when I would do therapy, like one-on-one with someone, you'd talk, and you'd take a break for a week or two, and stuff would come up. With this, I'm checking with every 1 or 2 days, sometimes 3. And what I want to have happen is it's just life happens, stuff happens, something happens to make me upset or whatever, and folks start writing about it. How they talk to themselves starts to come out. Because what I found over the years when I would talk to women one-on-one was women are brutal on themselves. I mean, not necessarily with other people, but with themselves, the way their self-talk is. I can't believe this, and over here. And that starts to come out in the journal. I don't mean like everyone's horrible with it, but it usually is harsher. And they are kind and gracious with other people, much more so they are themselves. And the example I tell them is, imagine if I let you borrow a little girl. Let's pretend you could rent one, 6 or 7 years old, and she's with you for a day. I don't think I have to tell you how to take care of her. If someone's mean to her, you tell them to stop. If they won't stop, you take her away. I mean, see, women know how to do this, but they don't do it with themselves. And it's not enough to say, be kind to yourself. I've tried that. That's because in the moment, again, the feelings take over. And I found that when we tied into, let's make it feelings focused and treating your feelings like you would a little girl. As they start practicing that, they start to feel it. The irony is that when you embrace your feelings, they calm down, and that wall that folks have around their heart starts to naturally fall down. That's why I mentioned about the animal, the cat and the dog. And there may have been, I think, a couple of cats with this, is that those animals can feel it, because that's what women naturally do, is glow. It's not that we have to get them to glow. That's what women do, unless things are getting in the way.
Yeah, I love what you're talking about, because like if you do go to therapy, like that is like the vacuum on the carpet. It just like all the dust starts to come up, and then it's like you have to wait another week to and it's how do you really process that? So I like what you're saying is you're writing back and forth in these journals. You're doing some online live stuff. You have the course modules. And I know there's an exclusive deal for our audience. So if you, like for the lounge, we all have exclusive deals with our guests. There's an exclusive deal for our audience who will join Bob's Emotions class. Now, it isn't cheap, because you're getting a lot of one-on-one attention from Bob. I mean, he's going to be there every step of the way. If you want to change the way you relate to yourself and you relate in your relationships, whether you're married or single or looking, and can you explain what the deal is for our audience?
So I'll take 10% off, and we'll have the code right down below. And we'll give you the code. You just put that in on the order form, and it'll just automatically take it out.
Okay. So instead of like $600 a month, you're getting $60 off a month. So you're saving $600. Yeah. $600. So that's great. And so you're getting all this personalized attention. And how long do they have to register? Well, they have like a few days, because it starts on the 12th. So this,
I mean, it's one of those, it's really what a lot of clients that have gone through it have said is that, I used to say, we'll do a year's worth of therapy in 3 months. And one wrote back, she says, a year? She goes, I went to therapy 2 years and didn't get this. And
Yeah.
it's mainly because, like you said, it's the interaction that happens real time,
Yep.
and there isn't that wait a week, wait a week. I mean, that's the traditional model. And I mean, I still do that with some folks that want to, but this is the idea is to this changes everything and it affects you for the rest of your life. This isn't something you have to go through every year.
Yeah.
This
So
is
it's a one
go
and
through it
done.
once.
Yeah.
It's like Alice in Wonderland, but it really is like walking into a different world.
Yeah, this is awesome. And the link that I'm going to put in the description of the video, it's going to take you to the lounge where Bob actually worked his magic on one of our guests, and you'll get to see it live and see it happen. And then there'll be a link to have our exclusive deal, but you have to register before it starts, which is October 12th. So Bob, thank you so much for coming and for giving us all this information. I know myself, I'm going to have to go back and rewind it and watch it over because there's so much stuff. So make sure if you have a question for Bob, you have a question about the program, put it in the comments and Bob or I will get back to you after the replay. So thank you so much, Bob, for coming on. And once again, everything could be, you just go to his website, relationshipheadquarters.com, or his YouTube channel and get in his class if you feel you're struggling. It's for everybody who wants to really make that change in their life. So thank you so much, Bob, for coming. And
thanks, Chris. I enjoyed being here again.
Thank you so much. Have a great day. And we'll see you guys next week.